Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest issue of Comic Book Gentlemen, the podcast where we use our decades of being giant nerds to discuss the most divisive issues in our fandom. I'm your host, Greg, joined by my constant co-host, Dave. How's it going, Dave?
Do you know what? It's 2022.
Yep.
It's over.
It's over.
I'm ready for this. Talk about the year as a summary.
Yeah, it's crazy to think it's already December.
Yeah,
it's already the holiday season.
It goes by too quick.
It's also our third time doing this podcast, or this specific episode.
My God.
Yeah. I actually, whenever we have this episode coming up, I'm always like, the hard part about this episode I find is, what did I read in the first half of the year?
Yeah, that's always the tough part. It's like January and February are just like a fog.
Yeah. And it's the worst, too, if you read something you really liked back then, too. It's like, I can't believe I forgot about that. So, like, what I ended up doing was listening to our previous podcast.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, okay, last year's podcast, if I didn't mention it then, I probably haven't read it until 2022. So I'm good to mention it now. But then I feel like in my head, I'm like, I've talked about this a million times. Yeah. How was this not on my list last year? It was just because I read it in like January, February, I had all this year to talk about it. So guess what? I'm going to talk about it again. Yep. Can't help it. But yeah, how was I guess for anybody new who hasn't heard our previous episodes, go back and listen to it. It's awesome. We appreciate it. But yeah, every December we go through our top lists of either comics or specific storylines or something like that was just our favorites for the years, and we highly recommend you guys checking it out. So that's the plan for this episode again. But in general, how was 2022 for you for comics? Was it a good year? Was it a mid-year? Was it a bad year?
I'm gonna say what I have read on a regular, the stuff that I collect, the stuff that I've followed. It was abysmal.
Oh, really?
I would say. There was really not, there was just, it just seemed, and I don't know if it was just the general, 2022 feel. It was just like a bleh kind of a time. I did not, when I first started putting my list together, I was really struggling.
Really?
Yeah, other than, I snapped off, one or two, and then I remembered, oh, right, I read some stuff outside of what I normally read. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, that stuff was actually pretty good. So some of that stuff made the list. But nice. I think overall, for just mainly what I collect, I would say the main Marvel titles, especially, those are my primary collection. It was rough.
That sucks.
It was a rough year.
I felt like I had a decent year. I felt like I tried a bunch of new stuff. Unfortunately, like I said, I listened to last year's episode. A bunch of the stuff I read last year ended this year, so it was like, oh man, I gotta find some new stuff, trick it out. I even went back and read a bunch of old stuff too. So I thought it was actually a good year for me. But so before we get into our tops, you said you had a little special list for me.
Yes. These were the three ones that just popped to mind immediately when I was thinking of this. That went in the opposite direction.
Oh no.
That were just bad. And the first one I was really excited about when it first came out, which was Dark Ages.
Oh yeah.
By Marvel. It was kind of a neat concept with the powers basically shut off. There's no power, so you got all your guys like Iron Man and stuff like that, they're hooped because they have no power. But it was a neat concept, the way they introduced it, the way they were kind of advertising it when it was first coming out. And I'm going to say, the first little bit was fun because it's one of those alternate universes where they could just randomly kill off anybody they want because who really cares, because it's not the real thing. So there was just these surprise deaths and things happening all the time, and it was a lot of fun, interesting characters like Miles Morales having possession of both Carnage and Venom.
What?
There was just a lot of really cool, neat things. And then it was just you're reading it, and then you got to issue 6, and then you were like, oh, it's done? There was just no finale. There was no finale at all. It was just, it fell so flat. Yeah. And the art was fantastic. The artist, I can't remember his name at this point, but he's actually just moved on to Fantastic Four. He's a really good artist. Yeah. They had a really good concept because you have the whole Marvel universe, and you can twist it any way you want because it's just an alternate, hey, here's an interesting side story. And it was just wow, you guys made this not interesting at all. It was really disappointing.
That sounds like something they'd go in a pitch meeting for. It's we have this great idea, total global blackout, let's see what happens. And oh, sweet, yeah, go ahead. And then they're halfway through oh, shit, we didn't think of an ending.
Yeah, it was just it fell flat, unfortunately.
That sucks.
So that was one of them. The second one was Judgment Day.
Yeah, I heard you talk about this a little bit.
It was meaningless.
Yep.
And what was really sad, like if you were reading these like week to week, month to month, however they were coming out, like at one point, I think probably about issue 4, you're like, oh my god, they're like restarting the Marvel universe or doing like a reboot or something, because the whole planet's been destroyed.
Jeez.
Like everybody is dying. Like, and they're killing off, like, I mean, normally you see comics like this where it's like, oh, they killed off Captain America, or they killed off Iron Man, or whatever. It's like, no, we're going to kill off, like, all the Avengers.
Jeez.
In one shot. Or we're going to kill off all the X-Men in one shot. Like, it was just so epically huge to land with just a really unsatisfying ending with no consequences.
Yeah.
It was just, the art was there. I don't think Gillian's a bad writer.
Well, again, it's one of those situations where they said, like, we have to have an event.
Yeah.
Let's do something crazy. Oh, but we don't actually want to change anything. We just have to have an event. Yeah. And it's just like, so, like, what was the end? Because if it's shit anyways, who cares? Like, did they just go, oh, never mind, it was all...
Yeah, they just reset it. That was it. Like, I'm talking, like, you saw, like, at least probably 3 comics of, like, the entire planet just absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
Like, they're basically, at this point, just kind of hiding from the Celestial.
Yeah.
And trying to keep everybody alive. And then one of the things that didn't make any sense to me at all was the fact that it was, like, originally started with a fight over the fact that the Eternals were not happy with the X-Men because the X-Men were resurrecting themselves, and that's the Eternals. Apparently, that's their thing.
So they have dibs.
It's like, hey, wait a minute, yeah, you're infringing on our property, and so they go into this fight. But partway through, it's like, yeah, there's this epic, huge attack on the Sentinel, and he just kills everybody.
Jeez.
In one shot, and you're just like, holy wow, what the heck just happened? And then the X-Men resurrect Captain America. It's like, how? I thought that was just mutants.
Yeah, because the whole point was that Xavier
didn't make any sense.
Was around mutants enough to copy their brainwaves.
Yeah, he had with Cerebrum.
Yeah.
So like this, like it just didn't make any sense. So does that mean like he's been copying other people too now, or like it just
just important people?
And he came out of the egg with his shell or with a shield. Like what? Like, I mean, okay, it was an epic picture, right, and a big surprise, but it was just like, huh?
So what was the outcome? Like, so did the X-Men go, oh, we'll stop resurrecting, or literally nothing? Like everybody came back to life. Everybody
just came back to life. The only difference, the only thing that basically the only consequence was for the Eternals, as you had. And I'm trying to remember her name. She's one of the main...
Cersei?
Cersei. Yeah. She is dead.
Oh, okay. The one the Eternals who are supposed to be forever.
Yeah. And it was like one of these like, oh, you think you're so cool, you judge people, why don't you judge yourself? And it's like, I judge my, don't compute. Like it just was so dumb.
So one of the things that you told me was a cool aspect of it was Uranus on Mars.
Yes.
So what happened with that?
Nah, they just brought it all back.
What? They just like moved on, nothing.
Yeah. Well, everybody's just coming back. Like there was.
What's the point?
There were characters that died earlier on in the series.
Yeah.
That they're just back.
That's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on.
And like you're landing that to now move into like Dark Web. And the crossover between, of all things, Spider-Man and X-Men, while at the same time pitching Sins of Sinister.
Yeah.
Like it's becoming saturated. It's horrible, and these ideas aren't even like, they might be like very cool concepts, like the idea, but then when it's like they just don't flesh them out.
Yeah,
it's just bad.
That's fascinating.
So which leads me into the last one, the worst one, which is a culmination of everything. Because I signed myself up for this, and now I'm regretting it. Reading the Dawn of X, Reign of X, the entire X-Men franchise. For anybody that's wondering, hey, should I get into X-Men? Don't. It is so appallingly bad.
Really?
It's just bad. Some of the comics have literally been turned into just straight up teen dramas with no real superhero aspect to it. It's just like, hey, it's like you're a part of a documentary crew that's just following around a bunch of teenagers who just happen to have special powers.
The Jersey Shore of
there's so much useless like dialogue that goes nowhere. I hate these white pages that show up all the time. I've mentioned that before. Because now it's just gotten to the point of like, like where they used to serve a purpose of like bringing you up to speed on something.
Yeah.
Now it's just like, oh, this is Magma's journal, and she wrote something nasty about Sunfire.
Oh, geez.
It's just like, it's so bad.
I remember the
So
white
bad.
pages, like one of the ones I thought was cool was X-Force. I think it was X-Force. It was either X-Force or Marauders, I can't remember. But it was like, it was a human's perspective on it.
Yeah.
Like somebody in the FBI or somebody like, or SHIELD or
Yep.
something like that, typing like,
X-Desk.
yeah, exactly. Where they're typing like, they did this time, how are we going to react or whatever.
Yeah.
And that stuff was fascinating, like you're
Yeah.
saying. But yeah, some of them are very...
some of this has
nothing.
just gotten just out of hand, stupid.
It's which is very sad, and we did our whole episode on Jonathan Hickman's run as head of X, and it's definitely one of those things where it's definitely gone downhill.
They better bring an end to it soon.
Yeah.
And I know like CBR and some of these other bigger comic book resource type stuff on the internet like to pump it up, but they're paid to do that. Every single individual person that I've looked to say like, hey, did you read this? Did you like it? Everybody's like, at the most they were like, I read it. I was like, this one was okay.
Yeah.
That one was okay. But the large majority of the stuff that they're producing is absolutely horrible.
Well, I think the hard part too is like the ones that were good, they ended. Like Marauders was pretty decent. They just ended it. Hellions, I loved Hellions. Was I think it was my number 1 last year. Like they ended that. Just never did anything.
Well, Marauders is back. Like
really?
they've got they just restarted it because that's what they like to do.
Yeah.
You're right. You get that number 1 issue out there, but it's gone from what it was like. I would say like the first beginning, the first, I'm gonna say 10 to 20 issues weren't bad.
Yeah.
And then it started getting bad.
Yeah.
Like it started really getting stale. So they ended it, and then when they brought it back, apparently it's now horrible.
Oh, really? That's
Like it's just not good.
What are they doing over there, man?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if I really wanted to like ruin your life, I'd make you read Excalibur.
No, never again.
Because Excalibur is bad, and then moving into the Knights of X it's just so bad.
Yeah.
And ones that really kind of like started off with a bang and were kind of interesting, like Sword.
Yeah.
Was really quite good. The art was good. The story was kind of interesting at the beginning. Again, just like it's like they went, hey, here's a great idea. What are you going to do with it? I don't know.
Yeah. Spoilers. I do have an X book on my list.
I'm not saying they're all.
I know,
yeah,
for sure.
I'm wrapping them all up, and the good ones are going, hey, what are you putting me in here with? And it's just like, sorry, it's you're graded on association.
I'll because I even told you this when you told me I'm gonna read every single one. I said don't.
Yeah.
So
Yes, you did. Yes.
So I still vouch for that. The one I have on my list, I'm gonna try to convince you to read it.
That I probably have already.
Yes.
But it was just it's the entire X-Men universe is an absolute catastrophe.
That sucks. Well, that's the downside of the podcast.
That's the downside.
Let's get into the
There
good stuff.
was some good stuff.
There was good stuff. We promise.
Yeah.
So funny enough, every time the last 2 years we've done this, we always end with our honorable mention. So this we're going to change it. We're going to start with an honorable mention, really quick. Something that almost made your list.
Okay. There are two things that almost made my list, and I would put them right at the same level. Would be Starship Hulk.
Yeah. It's pretty rad.
and the continued Thor run.
Yes.
Both of those almost made the list, not quite. The Banner of War was kind of fun, but there was also, I think, a distribution issue there for a while because they just went like Hulk and Thor just went dark for like 2 or 3 months, and there were no issues being produced.
It was weird.
So, but those ones I would say are the best. Like Donny Cates. We'll just ramp everything up a million times over.
Yeah.
Otley's art on Hulk is just kind of uniquely fitting to a degree, and Nick Klein's predominantly he does most of the work on Thor has been great. I would say those two just about made it in. They're very worth reading.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like the Banner, even though the Banner War was a lot of fun in the sense of like you just want to see two big powerful people beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
It was fun, but it wasn't. Like,
Top 5
it
worthy.
wasn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My honorable mention. So we did a podcast a couple episodes ago where we had Melanie on the podcast and we kind of gave our recommendations for check out. And I actually did check out a few of yours because I was like, I actually hadn't heard of these. I'm curious. The one that actually got me, I was like, that's very interesting, was Avengers Red Zone.
Yeah.
I read it and I was like, wow, that's fascinating. Considering how it came out in the early 2000s
Yeah.
and how it reflects modern society 20 years later, I'm like, fascinating. The only thing I don't like about it was just some of the characters, I had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
There's this guy, I think his name was like Jack of all trades or something like that, and he's like half gold, half something. I don't know.
Yes, Jack.
Yes.
Yeah.
No idea who he was. Had nothing to do with the story.
Yeah, there were certainly some Avengers in there that were like fringe members.
Yes.
That if you're not super familiar, which I'm embarrassed of the fact that I just can't remember his name at this point, but there were definitely some fringe members in
Yes.
there that people were like,
Who? Yeah. But like the story in general, I highly recommend people just go check it out because it's very fascinating what happens.
funny
But,
thing,
yeah.
first time I ever saw the art of Coppola.
Really? That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah. It was good. And it was Jeff Johns too. So
Yeah.
I like Jeff Johns. So
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. So yeah, now let's get into our full number fives.
Okay.
I'll start.
Okay.
Only because you just mentioned the one I have on number 5.
Oh.
I have Banner of War.
Okay.
By Donny Cates. The
Yeah.
reason it's my number 5 is like you said, it's just we've seen Hulk versus Thor a million times.
A million times over.
Decades. But of course, Donny Cates just has to take the concept and turn it up to 11. It's just a fun, good time. It's not very deep. There's no 100%. This is just Hulk and Thor, randomly Iron Man for no reason, on a planet a million miles away, just go ham on each other, and it's just amazing. You have Hulk Thor, and you have Thor Hulk. Like at a certain point, your whole nerd level just has to be like, you have to just read it just to see, just to see, right?
It was a fun ride.
It's a fun ass ride. I had a I think kind of like what you were saying about like it seemed to go dark at one point. Like I started reading it like 6 months ago when I went on Marvel Unlimited, and I just forgot about it. And I just finished it like a couple weeks ago when I had to do this list, and I was just like, oh yeah, this came out.
This was
But it was good, yeah. I finished it. It was just a good thing, and then the ending was just like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
And they just went on their own way.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good time. But yeah, that's it barely made my list there, but it was a good time.
Yeah, it was an entertaining. It was very entertaining. Like I
Yeah.
said, it just about made it into that, along with the Hulk
Yeah.
and the Thor. It was just about there, but it was like quite literally like, let's just have a Smash Bros contest between these two characters and just go at it.
Go nuts. It was I enjoyed it. But what's your number 5?
My number 5 was actually it's one that I think newer readers. I would be very curious if you read this and were like, I liked it.
Okay, interesting.
Which was Fantastic Four Full Circle.
Okay.
It was done by Alex Ross, so he wrote it and he did the art.
Oh, nice.
But it is a very much a throwback to like Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Fantastic Four. So the pace is like breakneck because there's a story to be told. But just the art and they even connected it to it was a story. It was a story written, I think it was like Fantastic Four issue like 71 or something like that. It was when they were first starting to get into the negative zone, and they kind of tie it kind of loosely to this a character that shows up in that, and it was just, for me, it was just like, oh, this is like a part of me was like, oh right, this is so nostalgic. This is back when I hated the Fantastic Four, and then the other part of me was like, oh right, now I'm an adult and I can actually read this and understand it's actually well done, and it's not just like, oh, it's Fantastic Four stupid.
That's really funny.
It was just a very well done ode to old school Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And he even had even with his painting and stuff, it just had that old school feel to it, like that Jack Kirby.
Aesthetic.
It was really interesting. I found myself at first I was kind of reading through it and I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna if this is gonna be one of those tough reads.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I was done.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that was actually really, really nice.
Yeah.
Really good.
So I don't like Fantastic Four, and you've said you're getting more into it now. Like,
Yeah.
what is it about Fantastic Four that is good? Like, why do you think it's?
I think
stood
it's
the
like
test of
it's
time?
less about the like for me it's less about the like it's funny, it's less about the characters, it's more about their villains. Their villains are
Oh, yeah.
like top notch, like Annihilus and Doctor Doom,
yeah.
and you know they're the ones that are usually messing around with Galactus and you know all these guys. So like the Rogues Gallery, if you want to call it that, is really really interesting. But they usually deal with a lot of stuff that I really like interdimensional stuff, time travel, like all that kind of weird crap. That really really dug into, like when Brian, I think it was Brian Hitch did a run on it, one of the more well liked ones over time. It was fantastic.
For lack of a better term.
Lack of a better term. It was just so well done. And again, it's a comic that I really like. I don't have a lot of interest in Mr. Fantastic or Invisible Woman or you know any of the characters. Like I would say I kind of like the Thing and Torch.
Yeah.
Kinda, barely.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just the bigger picture, and the stuff they're always dealing with is so. It's like Donny Cates level writing, like as far as the scope of what they're dealing with. So it gets interesting from that aspect. So
Yeah.
but it's I have to say, like out of all the series that I do read, it's probably one of my least favorites. But occasionally they get a good artist and a good writer in there, and they tell a really epic story, and it's can be very fun.
There you go. Yeah, maybe I'll check it out just to see. Maybe I can get in there. But
I'm curious to see just because it
yeah.
does have that like like before my time
yeah, old school
feel to it, and so I would be curious to see what you thought.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out just for that sake. My number 4. So this is my X book.
Okay.
So I was going through my list, and I like kind of like you said, it's like you had those couple that like for sure on the list, and then I had Banner of War. I'm like, okay, what did I forget to read? And then I realized I had no Al Ewing. I was like, man, I love Al Ewing. He's great. What has he been writing recently? He's doing X-Men Red.
Yes.
So my favorite part of Ten of Swords, and we've talked about this a couple times, it was a mixed bag of whatever, but I loved Arakko. I thought the Arakko mutants were amazing, and then they did nothing with them, and I was pissed. But then after the Hellfire Gala, they announced, hey, we're going to Mars, and that's where we're bringing Arakko. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. I just want to know a little more about the Arakko mutants. So then I found out, Al Ewing, art by Stefano Caselli. They're going to Mars. It's all about the X-Men on Mars, and I'm like, that's 100% just what I want to read, right? I only read this last week. There's only like 5 issues out on Marvel Unlimited, so the first 5 were good. I don't know where it's going, but the first 5 were good, and it ends on Judgment Day, and I'll talk about that in a second. But like you have Storm, who's amazing. You have Magneto, who's amazing. A couple other characters that are like, I don't really care for you, but at least you add drama, right? And it's just them talking to the Rockans and being like, what are we going to do? How are we going to work together? What are we going to do? And then you really have like Storm and Magneto changing where they were from Krakoa to match Arakko. And it's just fascinating to see them evolve and go like, okay, how do I now deal with these psychotic mutants, for lack of a better term. And then like again, the power sets are fantastic. Like Iska the Unbeaten is one of the coolest powers created thing in Marvel, I think, in the past like 10 years. Like it's the most fascinating thing, especially the way Al Ewing does it.
Yeah.
Like there's this really cool scene where the Krakoan mutants wanted something to happen, but the Arakko mutants like, it's never gonna happen, whatever. But they trick Iska to use her powers to influence the results because she can't lose. So they just find a way to like just work around her powers to manipulate it and use it. So it's amazing. It does end on Judgment Day. However, like you said, the best part about Judgment Day was Uranus on Mars with 1 hour or something like
1
that,
hour.
and just goes ham. And watching that on paper was amazing. Like it sucks it gets reset. So we'll see what Al Ewing does with it. But to watch it happen was insane, and the art was great, and just again the power sets are amazing. So if you burned out on X books, I completely understand. I'm a little bit too, but this one you gotta check out. It's a good time.
I would have to say between that one and the Immortal X-Men, they're probably, unfortunately, because you have the main X-Men title that is just drowning right now.
It's nothing.
But those two, the Immortal X-Men and the Red X-Men or X-Men Red, however you want to put it, those two are probably their best comics that they put out right now.
100%. So highly, and Al Ewing's great. Especially everything I've read of him so far has been amazing. So I'll keep checking it out and we'll see where it goes. Maybe he can fix it. Who knows?
Who knows?
What's your number 4?
Number 4 started a little higher and then it started dropping as I was putting the list together, but it was so fueled almost solely by nostalgia.
The ultimate fuel.
The ultimate fuel. The fuel that they used in the most recent Spider-Man movie.
Yes.
Was The Last Ronin.
I don't even know what this is. What do you mean?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yes, 100%.
So you had Kevin Eastman, you had Peter Laird, but then you had like a host of like, I was looking at the list of people that were involved in this book, and it's like, wow, this reads like a memorial stone or something.
Wow.
Like there's so many people on there. But it was just the fact, like, again, you know, I grew up just on the fringe of like Ninja Turtles coming out.
Yeah.
Loved the comics. Used to play the role playing game. Obviously saw the movies. Was definitely influenced by the first one when it first came out. We were just like us as kids were just like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But with this one, it was just like it's okay. Let's advance it in the future a little bit. The hands taken or the foot's taken over all of the city, and there's one Ninja Turtle left. And at first, it's kind of like, who is he? And I had my favorite, and I was disappointed it wasn't my favorite.
No.
But it made sense.
Yeah.
It made sense. It was who it was, and it was just such a nice kind of fun nostalgic trip. And again, one of those things where it's just like, what if we just took the existing story and advanced it in a weird way, and then said, hey, what would happen?
Yeah.
And it was again one of those ones I was just like I couldn't stop reading through because I was just like there's a lot of nostalgia kind of going back with some of the art. Not all the art was old school Ninja Turtles, but it was still just a nice fun. Well, not really fun because it was super dark, but it was a nice trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
And then really got me back into I was like, man, I gotta go back and read some of this Ninja Turtle stuff because like I remember loving this stuff.
Yeah.
So
no,
that was my number 4.
I highly recommend Kevin Eastman's run on TMNT right now. Like I think it's been going on since like 2015.
Yeah.
I've been trying to keep up with it. I'm super far behind. Every time I go to a comic store, it's just not there, right? And it just sucks. But I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's like a mix of like you said, the original TMNT was super dark. Like it was black and white. People died. Like it was nuts. And then they eventually got goofier as time went on. But then this retelling of it is like a mix of the dark and the goofy. Like you said, kind of like the 90s movie level of like goofy plus
the cartoon.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's really good. I love his run. But yeah, I've been meaning to read Last Ronin, just haven't gotten around to it. So I'm super I
wasn't sure if you read it. I was going to bring it over for you, but it was again mostly fueled by nostalgia.
Yeah, which is fair. I mean, that's like you said. I mean, there's a whole industry. It's just
and I tried to stay away from spoilers because it was like I was like I know it's already out. It's been out for a while, but unfortunately, it got spoiled before I got to get to the point where they kind of revealed who it was. But it was really a lot of fun.
Heck yeah, I know. I got to read it for sure. My number 3, and this is again one of them. I was like, how's this not on my list last year? I've been talking about it for like an entire year now. But it's Something is Killing the Children. Yes, 100%. By James Tynion IV and Werther Dell'Edera. This book is amazing. It's like I've said multiple times. It's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Stranger Things meets it's a whole new thing, and I've loved it. I love the art. I love the idea of just let's murder kids. Always a good time. And I've lent this to you. I've lent it to my niece. Like I've lent it to everybody.
It's also there's how many of them are out now? There's quite a few of them.
It's been going. Yeah,
it's been going for a while.
They're even starting to branch out a little bit into side stories of like what about the society around it and like all that stuff too. Like I'm so far behind. This year like the app was great, but like I'm so far behind on everything that wasn't on the app.
I know. Anything not Marvel's
everything
like,
not Marvel.
My God, I haven't read that. Well, look, I only just read the Long Halloween.
Yeah. It's been out since the 90s.
Yeah. Wow.
But no, Something's Killing Children, amazing. Can't recommend it enough. Like I said, I gave it to my 15-year-old niece. She loved it. She immediately was like, "Where's number 2?" So we'll see what happens for Christmas. But no, really good read and highly recommend. What's your number 3?
My number 3 was on my list last year. I wasn't sure what was going to happen this year coming around, but I and I know other people will tear me apart for this, but I've really enjoyed The Amazing Spider-Man with Zeb Wells and John Romita Jr.
Why would people?
A lot of people don't like it because, like, these are some of the complaints that I've heard. Like, it literally starts off in the first pages, and Spider-Man's in, like, the middle of this giant crater, and something's happened. And then they kind of fast forward a little bit, and, like, everybody hates him. Like, all of his friends are not happy with him at the best.
Mm-hmm.
All the superheroes, like Fantastic Four, like, nobody wants anything to do with him. He did something,
Yeah.
and we don't know what. And apparently, because it wasn't resolved in 3 issues, people are upset because Zeb Wells is playing the long game on this story, and which I love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing back the long story form. Like, there can be a whole bunch of mini stories in there, but thank you for bringing this back and making it drag this out 100 issues, please, because it's so interesting just to be like every time he runs into a friend or a former ally, and maybe they kind of help him, maybe they don't, but they just are just not happy with him. The X-Men are happy with him. Like, nobody's happy with him, and we don't know why. And it's just such a simple concept that you're like,
What could it
but
be?
why? What could it be? So, I've enjoyed the art. The first arc with Tombstone was really, really, I thought, really well done. And then now it's getting into dealing with the Hobgoblin. Again, what I hate about what they're doing in the Marvel Universe is, like, you've got this good story going, like they put out 2 issues, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, Judgment Day hits, so you just gotta, like, park all of that and do a Judgment Day thing and then move on, which was really kind of, in the last little bit, has really kind of broken up the latest story, because you had the Spider-Man went to the X-Men gala.
Yeah. Hey, it was a cool costume. Or no, who had the red and black costume? Was that him or Miles Morales?
It was Miles Morales.
Oh, okay. He had the great costume. Never mind.
So it was like we, even with those little breaks, I really like what Zeb Wells is doing. He's bringing back that mystery. Like, right now they're dealing with the Hobgoblin, and, like, even though we've been through this, like, who is he? Is he okay, now he is Kingsley, and he's now coming back and saying, like, oh, what was it?
Oh,
is it? And he's just creating that just that little shred of doubt that you're going, like, maybe he's gonna change. Like, maybe Kingsley wasn't. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Well, maybe no. He's definitely no. Maybe.
Oh yeah.
So it's really interesting. I really love what he's doing with the character. He's playing on the fringes of like things like him partnering with Norman Osborn.
Oh, really?
And now he's got a glider.
What?
And, yeah. And like stuff that I saw the pictures, and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna. And then I read the story and was like, you know what? He's playing on the edge, so close to being like, this is absurd.
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, and you just know it's gonna fall on its face at some point.
Yep.
Something bad's gonna happen. You just know.
Yep.
But it's been really, I've been very, very impressed, like, especially following up Nick Spencer's run. I just.
Well, I think it's funny because
Zeb Wells just, I think, knocking it out of the park for a story that's not your prototypical Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned Nick Spencer too, because I feel like what you've told me about Nick Spencer's run, it was all about trying to fix Spider-Man.
Yep.
And now that he's kind of more fixed and streamlined, now you have Zeb Wells going, okay, now we're going to the next step, which is like, let's try
that's the thing.
something
Is like it's fixed, and he's working off that, but he's just playing near the edge of like things that you just like. I was so uncomfortable with him, and like being friends with Norman Osborn or working for Norman Osborn, and I'm like, this is not going to end. Like, this is not going to end well. And like every time you think like, oh, see, he's starting to show his signs. It's like he keeps turning the dial back, and you're like, oh no, he actually was actually there to help him. Oh, jeez. It's just, it's so frustrating, like in a good way.
No, Zeb Wells wrote Hellions, which was my, I'm pretty sure my #1 last year, and it's he's a great author. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I'm excited to see what. And it makes me want to read Spider-Man. Like, how are the jokes? Is it pretty funny?
Oh, the jokes are good.
Heck yeah, he's funny but knows when to do drama. Like he knows how to flip that switch, which I think is really important, and it's something the MCU has a problem with, where they're just like, no, we have to just do comedy all the time, and that's why movies like Thor: Love and Thunder fell flat, is because it was just nonstop jokes that you never had a moment to feel sad, so everything came off flat, right? Whereas Zeb Wells is very good about those peaks and valleys, right?
I mean, jokes are good. I thought the flip, the twist in the first story arc with Tombstone was really well done.
Nice.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I gotta check it out. My number two. Number two, Batman White Knight. Again, one I feel like I've talked about all year long, but I have to bring it on my list. So Batman, we even joked about this, I think it was last episode about DC, that if DC didn't have Batman, they'd have nothing. But
basically.
Famous Batman storylines, Dark Knight Returns, Long Halloween, Hush, like
Killing Joke.
Like he just has such these crazy storylines. And I really feel like...
And some of the best writers to write a comic. Like you had Alan Moore on Killing Joke, Jeff Loeb,
Frank Miller,
some amazing.
Yeah, I honestly feel like Batman White Knight by Sean Murphy is up there. Like I'm gonna push this because I feel like what it does so well is it blends modern storytelling while paying homage to all the old stuff. Like you got hints of all those ones I just mentioned. You have hints of the 90s animated cartoon, which is amazing. But then you also have new stuff happening, which is so cool and it's just so refreshing. And like I'm totally engaged into this White Knight universe that he's created. And I'm so excited to continue reading it and see where it goes, right? And I just think I think DC's tough because, like, especially for you and me that don't read it on a regular basis, it's tough to, like, find how do you get in there. But, like, when they have these side stories and alternate universes, it's so easy to just jump in and go, like, oh, what's going on? Sweet. Up to speed. Let's check it out. So, highly recommend.
I will have to check that out. As far as I'm taking a trip through all the Batman graphic novels.
Yeah.
So my next one up is to reread, because I read it way back in the day. Was to reread The Killing Joke.
Yep.
Because I've got the anniversary edition of that one, and then I'll have to check this one out.
Killing Joke, really side tangent on this. I don't think it holds up as much, only because Alan Moore is such has moments, right?
Yeah.
I've talked. It's very interesting, but I'll lend this to you. It's really good. And then actually, it's really funny. You convinced me to reread Long Halloween.
Yeah.
So I reread it recently, and I almost put it on my top 5. Not that high, but I was like, I totally read it, years ago, so I can't add it. But it's such a good read too.
I would, Long Halloween would have made my list, except for the fact that it came out so long ago.
Well, but you only read it this year.
I'm so late to the party with it, and I was trying to stay with new stuff.
Okay, fair enough. I know we've said in the past if you read something from the 80s, go ahead. But
Long Halloween. If you haven't read it, check it out.
But also Batman White Knight for newer stuff. But what's your number 2?
My number 2, going way off the map on this one. Way off the map. It's the Critical Role Vox Machina Origins, both volumes 2 and 3 I read.
Oh, okay.
This year. Now I cheat and I grab like the special edition graphic novel one because there's nowhere to buy kind of indie comics. You can't get it on an app or anything like that. So I just you can, but it's complicated. Not what I'm doing. If you like D&D, it's amazing. If you like Critical Role, it's amazing. It's Olivia Sampson. The art is fantastic. Jodie Houser does the writing, which is kind of like I don't want to say they call it scripting because it's basically a story that's already taken place because it's their D&D campaign that took place that they're just writing now a graphic novel to. And it's the stuff that took place prior to them streaming it on the internet. So really you have no other option to see how they got to the point that they were when the streaming started, with the exception of this. So it's really, really, really interesting. Like I said, the art's great, the characters are great, they hold very true to the zaniness that happened in the stream. And it's just a combination of two of my favorite things, D&D and comic books. And you just smash them together. And it's both the last two have been great. The third one, which I read unfortunately last year and really should have probably been on my top 5. These two, well done, well written, well worth read.
Awesome.
Enjoyed them immensely.
Kind of a side note, but still talking about Vox Machina. Did you watch the animated show?
Oh, of course.
Was it good?
I hate cartoons.
Okay, fair enough.
loved it.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah.
And it is not like, do not watch this with anybody under the age of like 18.
Oh, okay.
because there's cussing is the least of your worry. there's some,
jeez.
there's some serious adult humor in this.
That's
in
funny.
that stuff. So, but no, it was really good. Like I even know people like, for instance, my wife who has never watched Critical Role, doesn't really know anything about Critical Role. She sat down and watched it, and she was like, "I really like that. When's the next episode come? Or like when's the next season coming?"
Yeah.
She's got turned into a fan.
How bloody is it? Like very, very gory or?
Not.
Okay.
I mean, sorta.
Okay.
I mean, there's parts, but the story arc that they cover is. Like it's like a D&D campaign. Like, yes, there's fighting, yes, there's stuff, but it's not. It's not. I would say it's not as gory as the, like what happens on their stream.
Oh, okay.
Certainly, their stream they like really push it. But I think both the comic book and the other one, they're certainly in the anime series certainly have their moments.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Okay, well, it's funny that your wife watched it because I was going to see if Whitney wanted to watch it, so maybe we'll check it out. But yeah, I tried Critical Role. I love D&D. I can't watch other people play D&D.
Yeah,
it's the same thing for me with certain video games where it's like, especially RPGs. I can't watch it because it's like, oh, I would never make that decision, so I don't want to I don't know.
Watching somebody play The Witcher.
Exactly right. It's like I sometimes I can see the appeal, but most of the time it's like I'd rather just play it myself, type of thing. So
yeah.
But no, I definitely
I don't have that kind of I don't know like with D&D streams if they're short, if they're like what has to be there has to be a good story, because if I'm just there to like watch the mechanics of a game take place, I'm like
yeah,
I don't care to watch this.
No,
if it's a really good story, which with Critical Role and any of these streamed shows are hit and miss from episode to episode, because it's you don't know what's happening. It's happening in the moment. They can have some really good ones and some
nice.
bad ones.
So now on to our number one. Mm-hmm. So my number one, fascinating enough, like I said, I went back to listen to last year's episode. This was your number one last year.
Oh.
It's Daredevil 2019 by Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cicchetto.
Oh, okay.
Man, you were telling me you gotta read this. I'm like, yeah, whatever, Dave, I'll get there eventually. And I did read it this year, and man, is it freaking good. Like, the amount of stuff that, I mean, it's a long, like, I'm saying the whole thing, you gotta read the whole thing, which is a bit cheap, but it's so good, because I feel like it just, again, it's one of those situations where it pays homage to the old school stuff. Like, you have so much Frank Miller references in here of the 80s. You have, like, they have a conversation about the Spider-Man versus Wolverine fight, like, from the 80s and 90s and whatnot. And, like, it's just so much homage. But then it takes so many things and brings it into a modern context, right? Like, the whole conversation about, like, should superheroes be held up to a certain standard? Should they be, like, go to jail? Like, how do we quote unquote police them? How do the police in this universe interact with superheroes? Because you had that cop who comes over from Chicago and is like, what the fuck's happening? Type of thing. And then you also had this crazy storyline with Wilson Fisk being mayor, and like, how does he deal with being in a public eye, and like versus his shady undergrounds. Plus you had people having to fill the spot of Wilson Fisk, and like, how's that fight going? Like, there's so much you had Elektra as Daredevil. Like, there's so much crazy stuff that happens in the storyline, that's just in the fact that he's able to make it so, like, it flows so well. Like, the only part that really had a bit of a hitch was when they did the King in Black tie-in, but even that wasn't that bad as it could have been. No. Like, they found a way to make it reasonable.
What I liked is he managed to maneuver it into the story that was already taking place, and then move out without it just going like, oh, the story's going along, and then we just break away for two issues and then come back. He actually wove it into his own narrative, which is, like, in my opinion, that's just a sign of a good writer.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that was not the case with a lot of other series where they had to break away. It was just like, you're in the middle of something, and then all of a sudden they just broke away and did these, like, random two issues.
And then when they came back, they pretended it never happened, right? And it's just like, well, what was the point of that, right? Whereas this one, what happened in King of Black impacted the story, not a huge ton, but like at least a little bit, right? And it was such a good read. Highly recommend for anybody to go check it out. And like you said, he's continuing it on. So after Devil's Reign, Devil's Reign was a little bit disappointing, only because I thought the ending would just kind of ended. Like the concept of what was going on was really cool, but then it just kind of okay, never mind, let's move on type of thing, and I was a little bit sad about that. But yeah, this run is amazing. I'm super interested to see what Zdarsky does going forward. But that's my number one for 2022. What's going on?
My number one for 2022 is also Daredevil.
Yeah.
And Daredevil. It would be the end of the most recent series into Dark Reign, or Devil's Reign, and then on to the new series. Because again, I thought the run itself leading up to Devil's Reign was awesome.
Yep.
The only issue I had with the Devil's Reign was just, it wasn't even so much the ending. It was just that there was something about it that just didn't quite fit.
Yeah.
But like the overarching idea of Fisk being obsessed with like, okay, somebody messed with my mind.
Yeah.
And, now he knows who it is. And then there was a lot of resolving what was happening at the end of the Daredevil in there as well, with the Stromans and what was transpiring with them, and basically Fisk just going completely like gangster on all of them and just going like, oh, you want to really see like it was really good. And I thought one of the most fascinating aspects that they just really didn't lean into was, I loved the Thunderbolts idea of like, we're just gonna slap a Thunderbolts badge on a bunch of like these random idiot villains and have them go around policing stuff. And there just wasn't, I didn't feel like there was enough of that, because it was kind of fun and interesting, because it was just like these most random people show up and it's like, oh my god, they have a badge,
like Rhino had a badge, and it was like an interesting mix of like Civil War meets Dark Avengers, or Dark Reign, I guess is kind of like, it's an interesting mix that way, for sure, but.
And there was that aspect, and then the aspect of Octavius using the portal to bring in other versions of himself,
dude,
that are like Ghost Rider and the Hulk and Wolverine, and it was just like, oh, this is so absurd yet really neat. And again, they just didn't lean into it enough.
No,
like it was so good, but like it had its slight disappointment there, but it was still a good read. And then leaning into the new series where it's picked up, where him and Elektra are basically like, okay, we're now, hip to hip. We're partnered up. We're both Daredevil. We're going to do things on a bigger scope. And they're going to take over the Fist. So you got the Hand. And then there's apparently another group called the Fist.
Interesting.
And they're taking over the Fist. And it's just like, there's been a couple surprises there that have come up. I don't want to spoil anything because it was really neat. But really, again, like just like you often see somebody come in and they smash it and they kill it and then it just starts to peter off. And I'm like, I was a little worried after the Devil's Reign that was gonna like the writing by Chip Zdarsky was gonna drop off a little, but no, it just picked right back up where it is, and I'm just like, okay,
he's got it.
Daredevil's a ninja,
man. I don't. Awesome. This like last like 5 years has been like the year of Daredevil for us. Like every time we have a Daredevil on there, it's
do you know what? Like I was so close to grabbing, and I didn't just because I couldn't find the. They already had like the third or fourth or 10th printing of the first issue of Batman that Chip Zdarsky did.
Oh yeah,
with Jimenez, and they had, I think they were on about the 4th or 5th issue that he'd done. No, 5th or 6th issue that they'd done. And I was gonna grab those because it was like, I'm such a fan of what he's written so far. I'm like, and he's grab Batman. Like.
So apparently, because I listened to another podcast that Comic Book Nation, pretty good. But they talk about his run on Batman. Apparently, it's just as crazy as Daredevil, where he takes old stuff and puts it in a modern context, and they're like, "You remember that?" know, type of thing. Like, what a throwback for them throws back. So yeah, we got to check out Zdarsky. I think that's a big theme of especially our podcast in the last couple of years, since we reading comics more and more often, is like some of these writers coming out are so good. You have Donny Cates with his insanity. You have Al Ewing with his deep philosophy. You have Zdarsky doing some awesome stuff. You have Zeb Wells doing some awesome stuff. Like, there's some really talented writers and artists out there right now that it's just like they're just pushing everything in such a new direction. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting like where they are, because like you would have had in the past. Chip Zdarsky took over Daredevil. He's writing it. Oh, it's really popular. He would have been moved off that book immediately and put on like Spider-Man or the X-Men.
Yeah,
because
that's what they do.
Because that's what they do. And the fact that a lot of these, and even with the artists, you're finding that they're staying, like he's staying with Daredevil. Like, I mean, he just finished a run, then he finished a miniseries, and now he's starting on this on his second run. Which is great for characters like Daredevil, who was like that tier below your
B-level,
you know, your Spider-Mans and your Captain America's, Avengers, and all that kind of stuff, mostly due to the movies. But Daredevil's like right there, and you've got, by far, in my opinion, Marvel's most talented writer writing a B character. Mm-hmm. And making him an A+ character.
Yeah, elevating it, right?
Yeah. And you don't see that. Like right now, you know, X-Men, Avengers, you know, a lot of their bigger mainstay books are not being written by people that are doing a good job right now.
Yeah.
Not that they haven't done in the past, but they're just not doing it right now. Mm-hmm. And you see these other artists and writers that are on other lesser known titles that are just killing it. Like, why has Scotty Young not been moved off of Strange Academy?
Well, because they haven't.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like in the past, that's what they were prototypically doing. Is they were going like, oh, what? You got talent? Okay, we're gonna put you on the top, and that's why you never saw like a Black Panther or a Daredevil for a long time. You know, some of these other characters climb the rungs because their artists and their writers were just poached the minute they showed any kind of talent.
Yeah, it didn't give them the full ability to finish their story, right? Yeah. And it's nice to see that they're trying to change, right?
Yes.
I mean, like you said, there's still issues like the X-Men books are kind of falling off a cliff right now, but they're learning. I think they're getting a little bit better than what they were doing.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. Like, I mean, I've enjoyed some of the Wolverine stuff that they've done. I've enjoyed some of the X. Like, there's been bits and pieces, but there are certainly other comics like Excalibur has just been bad. You know, like there's been those ones there, but it's just good to see that like they didn't just flat out lose Chip Zdarsky.
No, yeah,
you know, and like proof's in the pudding to me, because he's been my top comic to read for 2 years in a row.
Yep. 100%, right? So that's good on them. Like you said, he moved over to Batman, but he's doing both. So there you go.
Yeah.
So those were our tops of 2022. Any final thoughts of the year, Dave? Or?
No, it was a strange year. Again, a lot of saturated stuff from Marvel, like with the miniseries and the events, and just some of the directions they were going, and they did lose certainly lost some talent. I know DC's been going through the same thing. You know, and I do want to say, like, this year I probably picked up more independent or smaller, publishing company books than I ever have in any other year. And there's a lot of talented people out there that don't work for Marvel or DC that I've been, you know, pleasantly surprised with and glad that I got introduced to, because now I'm starting to, you know, branch out into some of that stuff and kind of read through it and see what it's all about. So
That's good to hear.
It's an ever-changing, you know, it'll get to the point where all of a sudden Marvel and DC, you know, crack open their wallets and bring a bunch of people back, because they're going to have to at some point.
100%. I mean, DC's just a mess in general, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But that's the end, our tops for 2022. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening this year. We really appreciate it. Make sure to follow us wherever you found us. And make sure to let us know in the comments your tops of the years, and we'll definitely check them out and let you know what we think. And then our plan for the new year, our first episode should hopefully in January talk about MCU Phase 4 and what the heck happened there, and then our look ahead for 2023. But thanks so much for joining me, Dave, and we'll see you all next time.
See you later.